So before I begin, I'd just like to acknowledge that I'm actually on Whadjuk Noongar Boodja country, and that I was actually born here, and I live and connect with the elders here in Western Australia, and I pay my respect to them today. And I also pay my respects to the people where you're coming from today as well. So with regards to my presentation, I'm going to do a little bit about understanding MCI because I'm sure Lee Fay has already gone through that. Then I'm going to be speaking about an intervention or a project that I've just finished called Balance on the Brain. And that was working with people living in the community with MCI and seeing if we could help them to improve their balance, because we know that's incredibly important for falls prevention. And also see if we could improve their walking as well, because we know aerobic activity is very good for cognitive health. I'm then going to talk about some practical strategies, some barriers and enablers that we got out of that project. It was a 5-year project, quite a long intervention. And then I'm going to talk about a case study to do with people who are living with dementia. And whether we can actually teach them how to use a gait aid, because there's a lot of information kind of like from some health professionals that it's not really safe to actually teach it. But let's have a look later on in the presentation and see how we went with our project. So with regards to MCI, I'll run over this pretty quickly. Our cognition's on a trajectory, and MCI kind of sits at the beginning of that, just after normal aging, when you're looking at normal cognition, and then MCI, depending on someone's age. So the big thing to remember with MCI is people can actually revert back to normal cognition. If you do get a diagnosis of MCI, yes, a proportion will go on to actually have dementia, and we found that in our project. A proportion will just stay with MCI for the rest of their life, and some will actually go back to normal cognition. So it's a little different to dementia in that way. So with my Balance on the Brain project, the reason why this came about was because Nicola Lautenschlager and her team over in Victoria created some physical activity guidelines for people who are living with MCI, and there was no actual research out there with regards to falls prevention and the benefits of balance training for preventing falls, which we know for people with no cognitive impairment living in the community. There's plenty of evidence out there to show that balance and functional exercise are really good at preventing falls, but we were really unsure about people living with MCI. So this has been the first study in the world of a decent size. I still only had 128 people complete the study, but it is the largest study to look at falls prevention for people living with MCI in the community. So what it entailed was actually 2 balance programs, one called Clock Yourself, which was developed by Meg Lowry, who is a physiotherapist in Queensland. And Clock Yourself is used by thousands of people around the world. I think it's around about $2 or $3 to actually purchase on either Google Play or the Apple Store. And it's used by people who have maybe had a knee recon, because it's a stepping type of game. So as well as using stepping reaction time, it's also really good for your cognition, because what it does is it shows a clock face on the screen, and that will change as you progress and get better. So it'll start just with quarters and having colors, so red, green, yellow, and blue. And Meg will call out quite slowly at the beginning. If you have it quite slow and you can actually increase the pace, she might call out yellow. Someone steps into that first quarter. She might then call out green. They step into the third quarter. And so then a clock face might come up as the next progression, and it progresses through to even zodiac signs, animals, different things like that, and you can increase the pace. So there's a really good progression on Clock Yourself on the app. And I'm sure there's a number of you that have actually heard of it and used it out there. Balance Yourself is an exercise guidebook that goes from bronze through to gold, and Meg is fantastic at progressing people through their balance activities. A lot of these exercises can be static, but they're also dynamic, just meaning that people are moving, eyes shut, eyes open. It's really well explained, and it also progresses through over time. So what did we find? You'll see here that there's a phone of one of our participants. They're up to the brain games section where they have all different types of symbols. So they had progressed through really nicely. What did we find though? So with the balance on the brain, as well as doing Clock Yourself and the Balance Yourself program, we also asked them to walk. Now, most older adults, we find they will be quite happy to walk, and they're usually walking anyway. But we wanted to really encourage those who weren't walking or weren't doing any aerobic activity to really try and get into the routine of doing that, because we know that aerobic activity is incredibly effective for maintaining our cognition and helping our cognition. I think I've worked with like thousands of older adults over the last 20 years when it comes to trying to encourage and promote physical activity and more movement. And one of the really big parts of being successful and having people stay with that activity is if they feel a change. So if we make it way too easy for someone, they're not going to feel a physical change in their body. And when they don't feel a physical change, they literally don't see the value of it and they will not continue it. So although there's that uneasiness with older adults or people living with MCI or even people living with dementia, that we don't want to push them too hard because they might get delayed onset muscle soreness and DOMS, as we know. If we explain this to them, and we're actually quite happy that DOMS occur because that means they're doing stuff that they haven't done for a while and their muscles are like, "Ooh, I haven't been used for a while," then that's actually a good thing. And we need to start celebrating progress and making it a little more challenging than what even we might be comfortable with. Older adults, people with MCI, just anyone have so many commitments on these days. So in particular, they have a lot of health appointments. That becomes a real barrier. So our physios and our exercise physiologists really worked hard to try and get it into a routine on the best time of day for them to do it. I actually wake up at 4:30 every morning because it's the only time I can fit in exercise. So I know that by like 5:15, I'm done and my exercise has been done for the day. I know that there's a really good friend who's online currently, and she loves to exercise at the end of the day. I'm like, I am ready for bed when she's just going out and doing her exercise. But that really works for her. And 4:30 definitely won't work for my friend, whereas it works perfectly for me. So we've really got to be flexible and work out a routine that works for the person rather than it working for us. Um, I've heard a number of people who are working with older adults say, my job is to help them with care or to do things with them when it comes to their care, because I've worked a lot with older, with home care clients and staff who are working with home care clients. Your job is to also motivate them. Motivation and getting people moving when they're not motivated is a really important aspect in getting people to engage in physical activity. That's a really important aspect. And it can be really fun as well. You can come up with all different types of ways to motivate people. So please realize that that actually is part of your role. Some of the things that we actually found really worked, this became really easy and routine. They only had to do it 5 or 10 minutes a day. So you actually set a clock to it, really easy to do. It wasn't like we're asking them to do an hour a day. It was really quite simple, but we wanted to really have that compound over time. Many people enjoyed it. We did find some people don't like technology. My dad loves technology. He has a Fitbit tracker and he loves looking at it every day. My mum hates any technology. She loves being out in the garden. My response to both of them is you do you, and whatever works for you, you just keep doing it and keep enjoying it. So it's really finding what that currency is. That's a really important part. And a lot of people really love the guidance from the physios as well. So some additional barriers and facilitators that we found for balance on the brain. Some people just didn't like Clock Yourself, but some people did love it with the technology aspect. Some people didn't love Balance Yourself because they felt a little bit unsafe. Others really liked it. So what did we learn from this? One size doesn't fit all, and we really do have to be flexible in how we actually deliver and get people to do physical activity type programs. Try and choose the bits that they really like. Uh, Even when they find it difficult, that's okay. That's actually what we want. Like, I get my mum to do balance exercises every day, and she's been doing them probably for about 8 years. She's a bit worried that she was wobbling. I said, wobbling is great because that means you're actually stressing yourself and working your balance a little harder. If you're not wobbling at all, that means it's all pretty easy for you and we need to progress to the next stage. So she was actually pretty happy to know that and to understand that. And I'm like, oh my God, why didn't I tell her that sooner? She thinks that she's not doing it well, but she actually is doing really well. I'm in WA. The weather can be pretty extreme. When it rains, it really rains. When it's hot, it's really hot. So I think we had a couple of months of mid to high 30s, sometimes into the 40s. Weather can be a problem. And that's really where we need to get some creativity on what they can do as a different thing rather than just being outside. It's amazing how often a dog will help you want to go out for a walk, and it really did encourage a few people as well, which was great to see. Whereas other people found that walking was really isolating for them. So it's working with that person. Okay, so you don't like walking because you feel quite isolated. What about riding? What about swimming? Do you like swimming? Some people like swimming. They struggle maybe to get out of the pool. That's okay. And that's a really good extra form of activity, because to get out of the pool is a little bit like getting up off the ground, something we don't do that often, and it actually builds in that extra strength and balance as well. So it's encouraging them to do things that they might find are uncomfortable. That's actually okay, and we can do hard better. So here's one of our participants who was doing his clock yourself activities. Some of the really important things on getting people to do the activities, because not everyone did, is to understand the person first and what they really want to do and what they want to get back to. They might be struggling to do something. And so these exercise programs can really help them, especially if it's a physical activity that they want to get back to. And when you get to know the person, they'll feel a little safer with you, and you're more likely to be able to encourage them to be able to keep progressing with things, especially physical activity, because many older people say, I walk, that's enough for me. And we actually know that's not enough, because walking doesn't actually help you get off the toilet. Walking helps you to get to the toilet, but not actually get off or on the toilet. So that really comes into the strength side of things. And we know that balance is really important when it comes to falls prevention. I know Lee Fay talked a lot about goals as well, and I'll be talking about goals, and also she talked about the language around them. Very much, I fully agree with that. Older adults do not want to hear the word goal. We've been doing work for a number of years with older adults, and one of the beautiful things that I love about working with older people, especially when I go out and interview them, is they are so honest and they no longer care about whether they're going to be nice. And I love that about them. And they always say, I don't want to hear your academic speak or this government language. Just talk to me like I'm a person and like I'm a friend. So would you use all of these wham fandangle terms with me if I was your friend? Of course you wouldn't. Please just use terms that I understand. And I love that about them, because they're going to be really honest with you, and you can have and build great relationships with them as well. Keep the instructions really simple when it comes to people with MCI, and gauge how much they can take on. And if they need it repeated, you repeat it. That's no problem whatsoever. That really is part of our role, and it will become familiar with them over time. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about another research project that we did, and it was in helping people living with dementia and seeing if we could actually teach them how to use a gait aid. So for Willy Walker, this was one of the participants here, or a single point stick as well. Now, the reason for this research project is there's a lot of research out there that states that health professionals are unsure whether they should provide a gait aid, because they're a little bit worried that it'll actually increase their risk of falling. And there's not a lot of information to suggest one way or the other. And also, people who are living with dementia are twice as likely to fall than those people who aren't living with dementia at the same age. So dementia doesn't only affect your executive function, your visual perception, your memory. It also affects your physical function too, and a lot more than MCI as well. So we wanted to actually see if we could actually train and teach people living with dementia how to use a gait aid, whether that's a walking stick or a four-wheelie walker. Now, why does it go wrong? I'm sure you've all been there with this. My sister's neighbour had a stick up in the mezzanine floor of the garage, and we dusted it off and cleaned it up, and we thought, yes, this will help the neighbour. The stick was at the wrong height, there was no instruction on how to use it, and we just expected that person with dementia who had had a fall previously to be able to just grab it and go. And I know with my grandma, when she was using a stick, it was before my time working with older adults. I was actually working with athletes, and we didn't know anything about using a stick either. And she used to spend more time pointing at things than she actually used it to walk along and actually use the stick in a proper manner. So a lot of the time, because we don't teach people how to use a stick or a four-wheelie walker properly, that does bring about the chances of them actually increasing their falls risk. Same thing with the pharmacy. You often walk in, you'll see a whole bin worth of sticks. Oh yeah, that one looks okay. Let's grab that one, take it home and give it a whirl. Again, can be an incorrect height, so then they're leaning over a lot more. And again, no instruction, or it might be a one-off instruction. Here's a quick 5-minute, this is the lesson, boom. And we just expect them to remember absolutely everything from that 5-minute explanation in a chemist that can often be quite busy as well. The paperwork, I have been told by people who are already in the My Aged Care system, and you all would probably know much better than me, that the paperwork that the poor carers have to fill out in order to even look at getting a walking aid of some sort just becomes way too hard, so they just forget about it because it's just too difficult. And we'll have a quote by one of the carers who was involved in this at the end as well, and just the difficulties around it. We don't actually think about the colour. Who buys a car and doesn't think about the colour of the car? I know I choose my car, yes, by what the car's going to do for me, but I really want the colour of the car that I want. And plenty of four-wheelie walkers and walking sticks actually come in very different colours. How often do we ask our clients or the participant involved in the project, how often do we ask them what colour they'd like and what kind of shape they would like? And why don't we do that? We do it with plenty of other things, that's for sure. So it's something to really consider. Some people like green, others like red, some people like blue. Why don't we ask them? Let's be person-centered. So getting to know the person, actually asking them what type they would like. I know one of the gentlemen who was part of this research project was 6'3". A normal four-wheelie walker was not the correct size for him. So I actually had to drive 45 minutes south to go and pick up a special four-wheelie walker that was available for taller people, and then drive another hour and a half north to actually get it to him. It was so worth it. Absolutely worth it to give him the opportunity to use a four-wheelie walker that was actually correct for him. Now, one of the other things that's really important when trying to teach or train someone to use a stick or a wheelie walker is, why do they want to actually use it? Just for safety, I'm not sure that's necessarily the currency that would get them across the line. It's really finding out what they would like to be able to do that perhaps they did previously, and now they don't feel quite as confident to be able to do that. So this one's a case study. This is about Brad. I have used a pseudonym, but Brad was a participant in our project. He had Parkinson's and Lewy body dementia, and his wife, Julie, once again a pseudonym. She was the primary carer, but she was also previously a disability support worker, so she really did understand the system. She was really worried about Brad because he was starting to get pretty unstable on his feet, and she was really concerned about falls, and because she'd worked in the area before, she knew the damage that an injurious fall could do. All Brad cared about was being able to walk again with his dog, and his dog's name wasn't Milo, but today we're going to call his dog Milo. That's all that Brad cared about. He really wanted to be able to get back to walking around the block like he'd done for the last 8 to 10 years. But Julie was really worried about him falling on that walk, and she was even worried about him falling when she went with him and Milo because she felt that he could fall and also bring her down as well. So she was quite happy to give this a try. It was a 6-week program that we were looking at doing with our participants who are all living with dementia. She was very happy to sign up because what could she lose? So that was their goal, but they never called it a goal. It was what Brad wanted to get back to doing. Brad only wanted to use a single point stick. He was not interested in using a four-wheelie walker whatsoever. So the physio took out the four-wheelie walker, didn't speak about it during the first session. Their home actually had a sunken lounge. And because of Brad's lack of confidence and his falls risk increasing, he was starting to hop between different pieces of furniture. So she just concentrated on the single point stick and getting him confident and walking around the house and how to get down and up from that sunken lounge. That was really important. So she used the first week to do that. And then Julie was able to continue with some of the feedback on how to stay safe doing that. And then after the second session in that week of Brad walking around the house really well with a walking stick, the physio came back to what Brad actually really wanted to be able to do was walk Milo around the block. And she said, I don't think the stick's going to work, Brad, because you've got the lead, you've got Milo, you've got the stick. There's way too many things to be thinking about. So would you consider a four-wheelie walker so that Milo's going to be set and you're going to be set and you don't have to be thinking about too many things? Would you compromise with me? I've compromised with you on the single point stick and you're walking around the house with that. Would you compromise with me on this one? Would you give me a win? And he was willing to do that, which was great. So what happened was they kept going with the training with the stick indoors, but they also started with a four-wheelie walker indoors, where they were just practicing how to use the brakes and also stand from his lounge chair. So they were working both of those things indoors, but then they moved out to the patio. So Brad would walk around with the four-wheelie walker and also making sure that he was nicely upright, using the brakes, using the handles perfectly, and being able to sit on the wheelie walker as well. Because if he was going to be doing the block, then he needed to be able to have rest during that time and he needed to be able to use the brakes and also the seat. So this was how the physio progressed, both Brad and Milo. So they progressed from the patio to the driveway and the footpath out the front of the house. And once he got comfortable with that, then the physio added Milo in. So initially Brad was using the four-wheelie walker. The physio was walking with the dog. One, because she needed to make sure that Milo was okay. I don't know if you guys have had a puppy, but puppies tend to pull. They tend to want to walk really fast. They're so eager. Thankfully, Milo was an older dog, and Milo really understood that Brad was not going to be racing around the block. Brad was going to be walking quite slowly, and the physio took Milo with the lead and saw how the three of them walked together just down the path, round again with the patio. Milo was great, really good. So then the next session, they actually integrated Milo in with how Brad would be working the four-wheelie walker just at the patio area. So they worked out together with the two of them, which side Brad wanted the lead on, right side, left side, didn't matter, whatever suited Brad. Also how Milo's lead would sit and then have the brakes going so that Brad could actually use two hands. That was really important, that he'd be able to walk along with the two hands and not have the lead get caught up in the wheels or caught up in anything that Brad was near. So once the physio was happy about that, then they had a couple of laps. And over the next 2 weeks, they actually did a couple of laps of the block, and that she found that it was actually possible for Brad to start walking the block with Milo. So she started off with that home practice, and it was set around those tasks with Brad being more independent as he went along, which was really important because then he grew in confidence. And Brad now walks around the block by himself, which is absolutely brilliant. And one of the real wins that we hadn't really thought about at the start was that Julie now gets about half an hour a day where she can race around and do chores. She can sit down and have a little chill time. She can ring a friend, or she can catch up with bills or whatever she wants to do. And she's just got that little bit of time to herself that she no longer has to be stressed about it either, which is a really important part for Julie too, just to get that little bit of time for herself. Some of the other benefits that we weren't really expecting were, I don't know if any of you have a dog. Um, we've lived in the same house for over 20 years. For the first 15 years, we actually had cats that stayed indoors, and we had cat cages and stuff so they could go outside but not kill the flora and fauna. And then we got a dog only 4 years ago. All of a sudden, everyone around the neighborhood now wants to talk to us. It is very bizarre. It's like first 16 years, we would still walk every afternoon. People would just go hi, and that would be about it. Now they want to stop, have a chat with our dog. It's just amazing. Well, Brad had the same thing. His socialization just went through the roof. People would stop him the whole way along the line. They'd have a chat with Milo. They'd have a chat with him. He could sit down on his walker, knew how to do all that properly because he'd trained to do it over 6 weeks. It wasn't just a one-off session. He had that instilled in him. And when the physio wasn't there, Julie continued to instill the same sort of feedback that our physios had actually been working on with him as well. So he felt his quality of life improved as well because he was doing something for himself, which is what he wanted to do. And I think one of the really important parts of this project that is often overlooked is this happened in his environment. None of this could have happened if it was happening in a clinic. None of it could have happened if it was happening in a hospital. I truly believe that. So, but because it happened in his home, out in the patio, going down the driveway, and then in his neighborhood, and he was able to do it in his environment, and it was all really familiar. The only new thing he had to learn was about that gait aid. He didn't have to learn about everything else, which I think is a really important part. And the physio managed to work that buy-in where he wasn't happy about using a four-wheelie walker at the beginning, but you did a bit of compromise. Okay, you want to use a stick? We'll do the stuff with the stick first. He got more comfortable. They built a rapport together. Okay, I'm going to try now with the four-wheelie walker. And that rapport building was a really important part of Brad's journey as well as our physio's journey. So this was actually a quote from Julie. You've done more for Brad and I in 6 weeks than the health and aged care services have done for years. She wasn't actually talking about the people in health and aged care, the people who helped Brad and also her with regards to Brad's care. She absolutely adored them. She was talking about the system and the paperwork and everything she has to go through in order to get something like four-wheelie walker or a single point stick. Now, for the participants, and I think there were 90% of participants that the physios deemed were actually safe to use it after the 6-week intervention, they got to keep that four-wheelie walker and they got to keep the stick. We were doing a research project. There was a lot of paperwork involved. I'm sure if you guys have been involved in research projects, there's a lot of assessments, there's lots of paperwork, we ask a lot of questions. And our project was no different to that. But they actually felt like they got some real tangible benefit from it. And Brad got a new lease on life. So it was a really important project. And we have shown that it is possible, as long as you give people the time, that people living with dementia can definitely learn how to use a gait aid and they can get back to doing things that they want to do. So some just practical tips that I've learned along the way. I'm doing a lot of work with people living with young onset dementia at the moment, so diagnosis under the age of 65. Wear a really large name tag. Sometimes our name tags are quite small. Like, write your name each time just to make it really easy for them. So get it as large as you possibly can. One of my people who are living with the odd said, please wear a really big name tag for me. It makes it so much easier. Give them choices, colours with their four-wheelie walker, what type they would like. There are a number of different types out there. So provide them with a choice like we do a car. Use familiar routines. If you're able to get into their home environment, that makes a big difference. Repeat or rephrase constantly. That really helps them. And this is about them, not us as health professionals. So a lot of the time we're in a hurry, we're on the clock and we have to race because We don't get a lot of time to actually see our clients or our participants. Same thing with the research project. We need to slow ourselves down and we need to work at their pace. When I go and see mum and dad, they're well into their 80s, I slow down to their pace and they're still got great cognition. They are doing amazing things, but they do live at a different pace to what I live. I really enjoy slowing down to their pace and having a good chat. So it is trying to work at their pace is a really important part of it as well. Um, and I think allowing people to have that experience of how things work is much better than just telling them what they need to do. Uh, it makes a huge difference. So some of the key takeaways in my work, this was one of our other participants, really know the person and find their currency. This is the same with kids. If you're working with primary school kids for some reason, they may have autism, ADHD, find their currency, whatever they enjoy, and then use that in order to be able to help them achieve what they want to be able to achieve. And language, as Lee Fay spoke about as well, is critical. I'm quite happy to speak medical or health professional terms when I'm with colleagues and stuff like that. When I'm with people who are working out in the actual environment and working with older adults, I try and speak to them like I would family or friends. That's a really important part. We have a paper under review at the moment where we've interviewed 60 older adults from right across Australia, both regional and also metro areas they've come from. And we were asking them about reablement and restorative care. They did not understand either term particularly well, and they said it sounds like wanky academic speak or something that the government made up. So look out for that paper that's coming out, and they'd actually prefer that all of this is probably called rehabilitation because it makes an awful lot more sense to them. So I think there's still a lot of work that we need to do around the term reablement and having everyone understand what it actually means and trying to push it from being wanky academic terms to actually being used in aged care where it can actually be understood by all. And that's a really important part of some work that we need to still be doing. So when we're looking at person-centered, goal-directed approaches, which I would never use that term with any older person, particularly people living with dementia, it's all about listening, observing. They will tell you a lot in actually their body language, not so much their voice, but they will tell you a lot in their body language. And having that genuine partnership where we're working together, it's a really important part of trying to motivate people to be more physically active as they age, because we know how important it is. And it's something I'm incredibly passionate about. And it doesn't matter whether someone has dementia or whether they still have good cognition. There's still a number of things that we can do to help them to be more active. And finally, let's be kind. Just being kind is a really amazing part of getting things to be done and to be able to succeed in anything. Just finally, because I know Marie has come up on the screen, I'd just like to thank my research partners at Monash for the study on helping people living with dementia use a gait aid, and also the National Health and Medical Research Council, which is the NHMRC, for my Balance on the Brain study, which is a 5-year project. I actually write a monthly blog, which is completely free. It's all about helping older adults to live independently for as long as they choose. And I just take research speak and bring it down to tips and tricks on how we can live independently for as long as we want. So feel free to subscribe to that. It's free. You can use any name and just an email, and then I'll send it to you each month. Great. Thanks, Marie.
Fantastic. Thanks, Elissa. And I'm going to carry forward. Let's not use wanky academic speak in everything we do. I think that says everything very, very clear that we need to be thinking about here. Did have a question from earlier around alternatives to the word goal. Any thoughts?
Like many of the people put in Lee Fay Lau's presentation, what do you want to do? What do you want to get back to doing? Do you miss anything? And it's finding whatever language that person really can understand and really gets with,
Yep.
try and put it in that manner.
Fantastic. There was a question
And
about where to get access to those apps. Are they on the App Store? Is that the app on the App Store?
yeah, the Clock Yourself app is on the App Store. So it's on Apple and it's also on Google Play. It costs around about $3, I think. And literally, if you type in Clock Yourself, it'll be there. The Balance Yourself book, web has a web. It's on a website, and Meg Larry has the website, and it's called Clock Yourself or Balance Yourself, and people can purchase that as well.
Fantastic. It's been great to read the chat as you've been talking. There's been some fantastic stories and some great tips and tricks in there, especially about renaming equipment and giving it personal names. And I know that we'll be hearing from Nell later on today, and she's named her Dementia. So I think if we don't talk about aids, walking aids, if we give them names, it takes away some of that fear people have. And as somebody else said, you can get some really snazzy ones now. They don't have to be boring. We can bling them up. We can make them more in line with our personality as well. So that's really important. So much good stuff in there. I think it's been a fantastic opportunity. We've got, hang on, I've got a question here. How often do you recommend to do balance exercise with the app? Well, that's a good question.
It is a good question. Yes, when it comes to balance exercises, they suggest people are doing things 3 times a week, sort of for 45 minutes to an hour. Clock Yourself, you're not going to use in that way. So if someone could build up to 10 to 15 minutes a day, that would be brilliant.
Fantastic. So important. I wear high heels nearly every day of my life. Balance is so important, I know, and I'm going to wear them till I can't, which is not too far away, let me be honest. But balance is one of those things we need to be focused on, particularly as we get older.